Lesson 932, problem 980. Part A of this problem wants us to graph the solutions to the inequality y is less than 4 times 1.15 to the x power. Hopefully you're looking at this inequality and noticing that this looks like an exponential inequality because we have y is less than a times b to the x, if you remember that exponential equation that we used to work with last trimester. So we need to graph a sketch of this inequality, and then we need to figure out if our line needs to be dotted or solid and where we need to shade. Since this is an exponential inequality, I'm going to make a table with a few points so I can sketch my graph. So I know that my starting point is the a part of my equation, so I know that when x is 0, we get that y equals 4, and I can confirm that by putting 0 in for x. So 1.15 to the 0 power would be 1. 1 times 4 is just 4. Okay, we're just kind of assuming at this point, we're looking at the boundary line, so we're just looking at this equation to get our boundary line graphed first. Okay, then I'm going to pick another x value, and I'm going to choose for when x is 5, and I'm going to go ahead and just put that in for x into my equation. Oops. All right, and when I put that number into my calculator, I'm getting, I get a number that has a decimal, and so I'm going to round it, so I get approximately 8. There's some more decimal points, but I'm just going to round it to 8. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick another value. I'm just going to go up by 5 again and pick when x equals 10. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in for x. And when I put that into my calculator, again, I'm rounding to my whole number and I get approximately 16. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I just want to make a sketch of this graph. So I'm just going to use those numbers that I have right there. So I'm going to get my graph set up. Okay, and I'm going to need a few more numbers here. This one's bigger. And I'm looking at my numbers, and I only need a first quadrant graph because I don't have any negatives. So I'm going to just do that. All right, so then the x values that I'm looking at are 0, 5, and 10. Quick label my graph here, scale it. All right, and for the y values that I'm going to graph, I have to go all the way up to 16. So I'm going to just keep scaling by ones. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and plot the points that I know, the 0.04. That's my starting point. I've got the 0.58 approximately. And the 0.1016. Okay. And now when I go back and take a look at my inequality, I have that y is less than. So there's no equal to sign, so I know that my boundary line needs to be dotted and not solid. And this should look like an exponential equation, so we know that it's going to be curvy. I'll do that to the best of my ability here. Okay. All right. So then, now that I have my boundary line graphed, I need to test a point to figure out which side I'm going to shade. And so a good number to test is the 0.00 because that is not on my boundary line. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into my inequality. I'm just going to rewrite that again. All right, so I'm going to substitute in 0, 0. So I'm going to let y equal 0, and I'm going to let x equal 0 and see what happens here. So then I get that 0 is less than 4 times 1.15 to the 0 power is 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1. So we get that 0 is less than 4. And that is a true statement. So since 0 is below my boundary line, I'm going to shade everything below it. Okay, so anything underneath there. Okay, so the solution set for this inequality is any point below my boundary line, not including my boundary line because it's a dotted line because we just have less than. Okay. All right, now let's take a look at B. So in B, we have the inequality y is greater than or equal to 1/4 times x minus 6 squared plus 3/4. Okay, so now when I look at this inequality, I notice that it is in vertex form. Okay, so I know right away what my vertex is, so I'm going to write that down. Because I need to make a sketch of this inequality, and to do that I need to figure out those important points, the vertex, the y-intercept, the x-intercepts. So I know that my vertex is, remember, you take what's in the parentheses, set that equal to 0. So I get that my vertex is, the x-coordinate is at 6. And whatever that number there is my y-coordinate, 3/4. So I'm just going to write it as a decimal. That'll be easier when I'm graphing it. So 0.75. And then we need to find the y-intercept. Okay, and to do that, we have to let x equal 0. So again, since I'm trying to figure out my boundary line, I'm going to just change the inequality into an equation just to help me do this. Okay, and so now we're going to let x equal 0. So we're going to replace the x with 0. Oops, I forgot my squared there. All right, so now I have y equals 1/4 times, so solving using order of operations, I've got to do the inside of my parentheses first, so 0 minus 6 gives me -6. And if I keep solving, the next thing to do is to square the -6, so -6 times -6 gives me 36. And then keep going, 1/4 times 36 is basically, we're dividing 36 by 4, so that becomes 9. So we have 9 plus 3/4. So I'm going to make my answer a decimal again, 3/4. I'm going to write it as a decimal, 0.75. So we know that our y-intercept is at 9.75. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look. I'm kind of thinking about my x-intercepts, and I'm noticing that my vertex is above my x-axis, so my smallest point on my graph, the lowest point, the minimum point on my graph, is above the x-axis, right? It's at 6 point, and then the x value is 6, the y value is 0.75. And I'm also noticing that my y-intercept is also above my x-axis. So what that is telling me is that I'm not going to have any real x-intercepts. So my parabola is not going to cross the x-axis because both the vertex and the y-intercept are above the x-axis. So it will not cross the x-axis. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a sketch of what we have here. And I'm going to just draw a sketch. So I'm not going to really worry about it being perfect. I know that my vertex is at the 0.6 and then a little bit above, so 0.75. So I'm just sketching it somewhere over here. This is not exact. That's my vertex, and I know that my y-intercept is at 9.75. So somewhere here. Okay, and we know that our parabola has to be symmetric, so it's going to open up. And when I look at my inequality again, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it again. We have the inequality y is greater than or equal to 1/4 times x minus 6 squared plus 3/4. Okay, so now in this one, we have y is greater than or equal to. So now when I draw my parabola, it's going to be a solid line because we have that equal to sign in there, okay? So there we go. And then we're going to test a point. So I'm going to test the point 0, 0 again. Whenever I can, that's the point I'm going to test. So y is 0, my x is 0. So we get that 0 is greater than or equal to, let's see what we get in here again. So we're going to get kind of the same thing we were seeing before. 0 is greater than or equal to 1/4 times 36 plus 3/4. 0 is greater than or equal to 9 plus 3/4. All right, so now we get that 0 is greater than or equal to 9.75. That is not true. Okay, so since 0 is below my parabola and I got that that was not a point, then I cannot shade the side where 0 is. So that means my solutions are on the side of the parabola where 0 is not. So I would shade everything above my parabola. Okay, so on this one, the solutions are all the points on the parabola and everything above the parabola. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and do C. This one will be a lot quicker problem. So we have x is less than 2. So the first thing we want to do is take a look at that boundary line, x equals 2. So on a graph, oops, let's fix that. Okay, so here is where x equals 2. So this is the line going through x equals 2. And since this inequality does not have an equal sign, this is going to be a dotted line going through x equals 2. And then if I test a point in my inequality, again, I'm going to do 0, 0 because it's not on my line. I put 0 in for x. And I can't do that. So on this problem, think about numbers that are less than 2. So that would be anything to the left of that line, okay? So we will shade in everything to the left. Okay. All right, so in this one, our solution is just everything to the left of x equals 2, and it cannot include the points on the line because we do not have the equals to sign.